All right. Hello, everybody. This is Chris Fabian. Hopefully you can hear me. Liz or Steve, I count on you to let me know if I'm coming through okay or if the audio needs adjustment. It is 10:01 Mountain Time, AM, Mountain Time that is, promptly. Getting started. I know several are still logging in, but we're going to try to get going here as swiftly as possible. To kick things off, I'm going to have Liz walk through the slide on the screen. We have 50 participants today, and there will be some interactivity or some opportunity for you all to dive into your data. And we were trying to think through how do we engage an audience of 50 people or so, and obviously using the audio might not be the best idea. So what we're hoping for is that we can actually use our Engage PBB platform. Again, Liz will walk you through what you see on the screen to create your ability to log in and post questions and post feedback, interact with each other, interact with us during the webinar, and also afterwards. So I'm going to toss it over to Liz and see if she can help you all with your very first exercise of the day.
Great, thank you, Chris. Welcome to everybody to Resource Exploration. There are three options on the screen for how you can interact with us during this presentation. The first, of course, being the Engage PBB forum. This is going to be the best way to have continued communication on topics as we go throughout this particular meeting, but also into the future. So I think that would be where we would want any sort of discussion to be posted, where there could be follow-up or continued efforts or communication amongst all of you. So to do that, if you just visit our website, resourcex.net/forum, it'll take you directly to the Engage PBB forum. Otherwise, you could just go to resourcex.net, and under the PBB Communities tab, you can click on Engage PBB forum. All you need to sign up is an email address and a password. So if you've already done that, you can log in. If you haven't done that, just enter that information and sign up. We are going to be communicating through the Applying PBB Data forum. So click on that. We'll be posting questions. We will be monitoring questions that are coming in or any sort of data sharing that you want to do during this meeting and then following. The other two ways to communicate are via the Zoom channel that we are going to be communicating through the webinar. So this would be for quick questions, things that don't necessarily need follow-up after this meeting. The first way to do that is in your participant screen. You can click on the More button and raise your hand. So if you want to raise your hand, the rest of the ResourceX team is going to be monitoring the Zoom communications as well, so that we can let Chris know when questions are coming up, or if you would like to speak during the meeting. That way we don't have Chris trying to go back and forth between the Zoom and his presentation. So if you raise your hand, we'll let him know. Also, if you enter any questions or comments into the chat functionality in Zoom, we will also pass that along to Chris. That way we can keep things moving efficiently and get everybody's questions answered. So if you want to communicate with any of ResourceX, applying PBB data through Engage PBB, or the two options through the Zoom tools. Okay, back to you. Oh, I'm going to pass this along to Eric Keck to speak to our upcoming leadership initiative, and then we'll be back to Chris.
Hey, good morning, everybody. If you are looking to exercise your priority-based budgeting leadership skills and grow some more muscle on that end, then you might be interested in a little bit more of an intimate setting, a little bit smaller than 50 here. We are hoping to have around 10 to 12 participants again, starting on October 2nd, which is next Wednesday at, I believe it's noon Mountain Time. we're going to be doing a 6-week leadership course that culminates with the creation of a capstone project. And the capstone project could be as cool as some of the things that occurred last year. I know we have some of those participants on our webinar today, but fiscal endurance was one of the titles of a project. How to align your strategic plan with your priority-based budgeting data was another one. And then just taking action on data. So as I said, the course is 6 weeks. We'll cover such topics as, being able to navigate and learn through the tools that we have through ResourceX, as well as learn about how to communicate our data better. Everybody's data's got a story to tell, and we help you give it a voice. And then also learning about culture and change. And I'm not talking about yogurt and pocket change. I'm talking about the culture of your organization, as well as how to make meaningful change and help people navigate through the pain of that change. Because those of you who have implemented priority-based budgeting know that it is not for the faint of heart, but it is also a worthy endeavor, and it's a journey that every organization that's in local government should be undertaking. So if you're interested in that, again, there's no cost to our current clients. All you have to do is send me an email, or on this Zoom itself, if you have some more information that you're seeking, just send a message to me, Eric Keck, and I'm happy to get with you and give you some more information. But we start next week, so it's coming up quick. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Again, one more quick sound check of Steve or Liz or anybody would let me know if everything's coming through okay. And I think we'll be able to get started. Thanks a lot, Santina. All right, thanks everyone for joining. This is a class, and it's a repeat of something that we experimented with at the conference. And the whole point of this class is that we picture you in this situation where you've implemented priority-based budgeting. Some of you are right in the middle of your implementation. Others have been doing this for years, and some of you are kind of right in the middle. And one of our staff members, Santina, was reflecting back at her time when she was an implementer in the city of Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and how they had eagerly gone through the implementation of priority-based budgeting. They reached this point where implementation was over. They had their data, and they were truly excited to move forward and start using it and have the department start taking action like we talked about. But there felt this moment of, there are so many different ways to apply the data. There was kind of this pause of, where do we start? And as we were reflecting on Santina's experience and talking with some of our own clients like you all, we thought maybe we can offer a class at the conference, which we did, and it went over really well. There's some hands-on exercises, things that you can try with your own departments, things that you can try yourselves. And just like Eric Keck said, the overall intent here is that we get to this point where you have great data, and now we need some practice on using it. And so that is the spirit of today's course. While I'm going to go through some training and some background and then some specific exercises, we'll pause for some of them to give you a chance to actually go into your own data and try out the exercise. One of our principles is that we want you as participants to actually try the exercises yourselves. And if you can make them work, and if you start to make the breakthrough with what the exercises are hoping to help you achieve, then you'll have all that, the more expertise to ask departments to do something. If it works for you, then it makes more sense to make the recommendation to departments. So we're definitely training the trainer in this approach overall. I will be getting feedback from Engage PBB as we go, and that will be how we interact with each other. So diving right in, let's talk about how we hope that our organizations would be able to implement PBB, and then with that data, move forward and take action, just like where Santino was along this road. Our initial theory was, as people started to implement PBB and then they would take their data set and make a positive change, we had a pretty simple theory. that if we could start to capture the stories of other organizations' success and then share them with the entirety of the PBB community, then everybody could repeat those successes, learn from them, and we'd spread across the PBB community, and everybody would be moving right along. And that has been successful. For those of you who follow our blog, we post fairly regularly, numerous stories per month about the successes across the PBB community. And for any of you who have heard Steve Seaman's PBB road trip presentation, that's of those bottom fly graphics of the United States and the nice PBB school bus are indicating, we have shared these stories about how, for instance, Rapid City used their data to begin to communicate better across their organization and through the public using their open PBB data site. In Branson, how they were communicating better with their budget in brief and how they incorporated their PBB information to tell the story to their community about how they're using this information in the budget. For other organizations who are not only using PBB to communicate, but to start to analyze their data, in the PBB road trip, we highlighted analysis stories like Duluth and how they were asked to come up with the cost for snow removal and were reporting back to their local news channel, and Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and how they were focusing on programs of interest to have departments report back on them. So we have tons of stories, and that has definitely been successful, but this little icon sneaks back in. There was still this feeling that stories are good, they're helpful, but there was also a longing for even a little bit more guidance or structure in what organizations might do with their data. So we built on that theory, and beyond storytelling and sharing case studies and examples, we actually came up with a framework for taking action, what we would do if we were in your shoes, and instructing departments if we were somebody on staff. And for those of you who either attended the conference last year, where this was the main theme, or for any of you who have deployed the PBB blueprint, that's what I'm demonstrating here. We tried to characterize in this graphic all the different recommendations that an organization might make as they're starting to take action on any particular program. And the blueprint was meant to introduce this framework to say, well, we believe that every program has a future to it, and it's either a program that you're going to want to grow, you want to increase service levels and do more of it, or it's a program where you want to do less of it, you want to repurpose resources away from that program through a host of strategies, or maybe it's a program where you actually see a revenue generating opportunity through fees and charges or insourcing and so on and so forth. And that was the idea behind the PBB blueprint, is that this is a framework for making recommendations, thereby helping your departments, coaching them to use the blueprint as they communicate with their information. And so we did framework plus stories. We said, well, how are communities outsourcing or insourcing with their PBB data? How are they applying program efficiency and documenting how they're freeing up resources and reallocating them to new needs? How is this all working? And at this year's PBB Summit, we highlighted a number of case studies. Here I'm showing Washington County, Wisconsin, where they have applied the principles of the blueprint to reallocate 13% of their overall budget. This dramatic accomplishment and feat. And there are several others who were doing exactly what Washington County was doing. And so our lesson learned here, though, was stories plus a framework have increased everybody's ability to take action on their data and achieve success. And it's been really helpful and powerful. We have many more repeat success stories, and the blueprint is embedded into your tools, actually. But we're practicing what we preach, and not everybody has clear direction on exactly what they might do as a first step in taking action on their data. And there has still been this kind of choose your own adventure feeling among some organizations that it sure would be nice if they had some guidance, like a manual, to have some recommendations, some things to try out with their departments. And so we've really taken that to heart. And that was, again, the purpose behind offering this course and the design of it at the PBB Summit. I would say that among those organizations who have been really successful in applying the blueprint and communicating on their data and really making tremendous progress, if there has been one easily identifiable characteristic of those organizations, it has been that they have a really clear objective for how they intended to use this data in the first place. And so that has been one of our major takeaways, is to help you all really think that through. What is your goal? And you might have many, but if you think back to why you got into priority-based budgeting in the first place and what you hoped to do with this information, what you hoped it would mean to your organization, and what problems you were trying to solve with it, that's what we're getting back to, that having an objective is what's going to provide context for how you use that data and how we can actually help you to use that data. Here, our guy with the scratching head is now looking out and saying, did we do PBB because we really wanted to focus on those reallocation opportunities where we can repurpose resources, kind of like the Washington County story? Did we get into PBB because we have a tight economic situation and we really need to focus on aligning resources with our strategic outcomes, and we have to prioritize and make the best decisions we can? Or did we get into PBB not really for those reasons, but because we genuinely wanted to talk about how we're using our community's resources to provide programs that really achieve results that citizens care about, and we wanted to tell a better story and communicate and educate our elected officials, our staff, ourselves. So having that clear objective is going to be one of the most important things for you all as executive sponsors and super users, to be able to set that expectation. How are you hoping that departments respond to you? What is the goal that you're trying to achieve? That has impacted us so much that for many of our new programs, as projects as we start, here's the city of Klamath Falls, Oregon, we actually spend far more time at the onset of a launch really trying to help that organization think through, what's your goal? Imagine that you have the data and you've taken action on it. Among the many different types of motivations that we see from the PBB community, what is truly motivating you? And that ends up being a great discussion. In the customer success meetings that we've had with a lot of you all as organizations who continue to evolve your work in PBB, that's been the focus of your Kat and I, is working on a project charter and saying, what is the true goal for this year? And what is your long-term goal as you evolve your practice of applying PBB data? And so as we work our way towards the very first exercise of today's webinar, I want you to think through, do you know what your goal is? And know what the objective might be among others across your organization. What are you striving for? Another thing that we rolled out at the summit this year, as we have considered all the different types of goals that motivate our organizations to use the data, we've made a first attempt to boil down all of the possible ambitions into 4 major styles or types of goals that we packaged as the 4 levels of PBB mastery. And we hope that this might actually help you to think through or identify what your goals really are all about, again, for this year and maybe for the long term. And I wanted to quickly walk you through, because the entire course that we'll go through today is designed around the 4 levels, so that if your goal, for example, is all about how you're going to use this data to communicate better with your elected officials, to tell a better story with your citizens, then the exercises here in level 1, data creation and communication, are going to be the types of exercises that you want to bring back to your departments and really have them engage with and try out. But if you're a level 2 community where, yep, communication's great, but what we're really focused on this year is how to make the best use of our resources, and we're really hoping to encourage departments to free up resources and make those recommendations, focus on the exercises that we'll go through in level 2. So let me give you a very quick primer on the 4 levels, and then I'm going to ask you a question for exercise 1, and that is to identify what you think your goal is, what level you see your organization at for this year. So level 1 is truly about data creation and communication. So there was a day before you had PBB data, and then you completed implementation. Now you have this tremendous data set. You have program inventory. You have the cost of every program. You understand how they influence results and whether or not they're mandated or recover their costs overall. And now the idea is, how do we use that information to improve budget recommendations? How do we use that information in ways that has nothing to do with the budget? And it's everyday management information or business intelligence as a department is making a recommendation for cost recovery or for shifting its resources. How do we use this information for communication to the public? One of our favorite examples of a level 1 community is Scott County, Minnesota, who changed the name of their budget book to Delivering What Matters. That was their communication goal. They wanted to use this data, help inform the public and the elected officials that is what the budget is all about. We're trying to tell the story of how we're using all of your money to deliver what we think matters to you, and that's how we use PBB. So during the course of today's workshop, we'll go through exercises that are all about ways that you can practice communicating with the data that you have. Level 2 then was about, communication for sure, but far more intensely focused on opportunities and options that you have for repurposing your current resources, this top right-hand component of the blueprint, options and opportunities to generate new revenue, and where you're going to focus those reallocated resources and the new resources that you generate. Level 2 is about resource reallocation and maximization. If this is one of your goals, then the exercises we'll go through include how to get departments to actually give you a recommendation on programs that lend themselves for an efficiency discussion, or how do you get departments to tell you which programs are on their mind for a fee increase or 100% full cost recovery. So that's what level 2 is about. Level 3 kind of piggybacks off of level 2. It says, okay, you might become a master at reallocating resources, and maybe you're like Washington County and you freed up 13% of your budget. And that's great, but it sort of begs the question, which we've heard, what is the goal? Is 13% resource reallocation the true objective of a level 2 community, or should we get to 15%? Or is 5% enough, And the more that we thought about it, the only way to answer that question from level 2 is to ask yourself, well, what do you need money to do? The only way to answer the question of how much you should free up is the completion of that story. Towards what do you need those resources to be aimed at to provide for a great future? And that's what level 3 communities are truly all about. They're far more focused on the left-hand side of the blueprint and talking about what are the new programs that we need to launch that we feel like we don't have the resources to launch today. What are the results that we're really trying to achieve that will drive the answer to the question, how much should we free up? So a great example of a level 3 community is Kalamazoo, Michigan, who has endeavored to take on these, to use the Jim Collins terminology, the big, hairy, audacious goals. They intend to try and break generational poverty is one of their stated objectives. And through the use of PBB, resources can be reallocated to launch new programs to achieve that goal, or through other means like partnering with their philanthropic community to generate new revenue, again, in order to fulfill that left-hand side of the PBB blueprint. And you can think about that and say, well, this is cool. I guess you can use that blueprint to continue to fuel resources towards these big results. and at some point, you will reach a time when there are no more positive trade-off decisions that you could consider. It doesn't make sense to reallocate anymore. You've optimized your organization. And at that point, we always wondered, is that the end of PBB? You have no more opportunities overall. And what we've learned from level 4 communities is that while yes, you are a very important service provider and player in your region, you are but one entity among others in the public sector, other nonprofits in your community, and even others in the private sector. And so level 4 communities have really ramped up their ability to apply PBB data for the sake of tapping into the resources of other organizations, looking for partnerships, looking for ways to regionalize, looking for ways to get programs off of your plate when somebody else can provide them effectively, allowing you to reallocate your own resources towards your new needs, or acting more entrepreneurially and thinking through where is your organization really well positioned to be the insourcing provider of a regional service and generate new amounts of revenue overall, again, aiming those towards the new needs of your organization. And that's what level 4 is really about. And so for the very first exercise that we wanted to get into, I want to pause, and this one should be the easiest one, but go ahead and take 1 or 2 minutes. I'll get a quick sip of water and write down for yourself what you think your objective is in PBB, what level you see yourself at right now or for the year ahead. And you might have more than one. One last point here is that it's not necessarily that you have to be complete with level 1 before you get to level 2. I feel like that's sort of implied in the stair step, but it's not necessarily so. If you wanted to be a community that's all about level 4, seeking all partnership opportunities, that could definitely be you. But if this is the most common identifiable characteristic for organizations who are successful at taking action on their data, is that they know what they're hoping to achieve, it would be a really great idea for you to go ahead and identify what objective is on your mind. So go ahead and take a minute or two to do that, and then we will get into the next question. By the way, if anybody is bold enough to share what their objective is in Engage PBB, we will be looking to highlight some responses from organizations. Before we move into the next exercise, this is also a great question to ask your department. It's a great question to ask your super users and your executive sponsor, just to make sure everybody's on the same page for what they're hoping to use the data to do. Again, it has everything to do with the expectations that you're going to set with departments when you're trying to roll out this data set. All right, we're going to move into level 1 and continue the round of exercises. And this one is take the board out of board meetings. But the idea here, again, in level 1 is that we're going to use our PBB data to try to get far more communication out there. We want to talk about programs. We want program costs to be on the table in various discussions. We want cost recovery to be on the table. We want alignment with results. And so some of our clients have asked, well, besides the budget, where can we use this data? Where can we take advantage of opportunities to get it in front of council or other departments and really start to get some practice on mining the information that's accessible? So the exercise here is go ahead and open up any of your upcoming council or board meeting agendas or anything from the past, anything recent, and try to look through those agenda items and pick something that is, you could pick any agenda item, but find one maybe that's meaningful, where having program level information on hand would actually have benefited that conversation as council was trying to grapple with a particular issue. That is the spirit of the exercise overall, and to practice bringing this information to that discussion. You can roll this out to your department, you can roll it out to council, but the point is scouring through that council agenda and seeing, is there a program that we've identified that would actually make sense to talk about in the middle of this meeting, where program level information would actually benefit the dialogue. While some of you are maybe opening up a council agenda, and I hope that you do, and at the same time, maybe you have your online PBB information ready to take a look at, I'm going to give you two recent examples, and then we'll pause to see if anybody has some additional stories to share. So this is Benicia, California. Some of you have met the folks in Benicia. They're in the San Francisco, Oakland area. And very recently, they had a council meeting agenda item that had to do with their cannabis dispensary. They've just started to get into the cannabis business in their community. And there's a lot of questions on the table. Some council members are still debating, even though the time has passed, they're debating, is this the right thing to do for us to be in this particular business? Great question to ask in terms of, why are we in business in the first place? Does the program align with results? And other council members are realizing, well, we are already in this business. We have businesses popping up around town. And the city has just launched its very first licensing operation to try to manage it. And one of the first questions that came up was, how's it going? What is this program costing us? And so what Benicia has done is they have their present site, and here they've gone to the table section of the present site, and they simply typed in cannabis into their search box, and up came all programs where the title was cannabis related, or in there, they have really good program descriptions. Also a vote for making sure those program descriptions are really solid. You see all of the program descriptions that have anything to do with cannabis. This sparked conversation among one particular council member who said, wow, this is really great. It had not occurred to him that it's far more than just the licensing of the businesses, but you have a GIS program that is locating and mapping where the businesses are, and that's really important. And that program has resources going towards it. They had police recording the types of infractions that are possibly taking place. They wanted to see all the different types of programs that were impacting it. For this particular conversation, they honed in on their actual licensing program, and they could click into the more info section and get a total cost, get an FTE count. And this did not necessarily sway or change the agenda item, but some of the reflection is that now council is starting to connect the dots, that they have this information. That dialogue that was going to be at a very high level about cannabis prior to having their PBB data now can be far more informed. What is the program? What is it costing us? And that can lead to some better questions overall. So that's a real win, and we would encourage you to do it, because again, it just starts to create that discipline for yourselves as well. Possibly it could have let them know that in the future they want a program defined maybe a little bit differently to assist certain conversations. That would be good information. Or in Benicia's case, they really wanted to know what is it costing, what are all the other programs that touch this issue, and it was helping to inform that dialogue. I'll give you one more example, also from Benicia, and this is in level 1. So on that same agenda, the city was considering taking some state aid. There's like $200,000 potential in state aid with a city match. And the purpose of the grant was to expand access to various recreational opportunities. So the question was from council, okay, sounds great. We can take the 200 grand. But first question I was asked, what do we actually do in terms of recreational opportunities? What types of programs might we use this money to enhance and grow? Again, left-hand side of the blueprint. Or are there new programs that we don't even offer today that we could consider? So how would you answer that? What Benicia did is they just fired up, again, within Present and could dive into their result that had more to do with parks and recreation opportunities, the high impact programs, the large and the small, to say, well, here's what we're currently doing. Are these programs of interest? And again, just highly educational, great communication for council members and staff to start to think through how might we use this grant funding and what programs do we know that we already provide. So sometimes on council, they don't have a complete understanding of what do we even offer today. So to have that list of programs quickly at their fingertips was part of that breakthrough. I'm gonna, again, just give you a couple of minutes to possibly open up an agenda item, an upcoming council meeting, just give a quick scan. If you have the chance to practice this exercise here within the next, we'll take 3 minutes or so, then that's great. Otherwise, the hope is, again, for those of you who are really focused on your level 1 ways to communicate with the data, the hope is this is a really easy one, and every department could be tasked with this exercise just to say, hey, let's take the upcoming council agenda or board commission hearing agenda and dive into it, and how would you use your program information to add value to what we're about to discuss. And simultaneously, I'm going to look towards any other comments that have been contributed to engage and see if there's anything to pick up on. We'll take one more minute. If anybody is perusing through their agenda and has a good example to share, whether you're able to do it right now or at some point during the workshop, please do share it on Engage PBB, and we'll try to reference it here as we go along. One of the comments from our very first exercise about what's your goal is going to be a good segue into the very next exercise as we move into level 2. So I'll pause here again for just a minute, and then we'll get going with the next exercise. All right. The next exercise is going to be kind of a transition from level 1 to level 2. And 2 of the comments that came from Engage PBB, thanks a lot to Jeff in Washoe County Schools, and thanks to Juan in Rio Rancho. Both of them identified objectives that had to do with a tight budget situation. So how are we going to even find opportunities to look at specific programs that we could do less of, and also aligning resources with results and continued fund prioritization. Those are two great objectives, and I'm going to talk about those as we start to move into level 2, because that's truly what we can start to do as a level 2 community. Thinking about that blueprint is finding out options and opportunities to free up resources or do less of certain programs. But the main question is, how in the world do you get departments to participate and start to think through what some of those options are? So this next exercise, again, the way we've structured it is to make it personal. We want you to try this first, because if you can try it and make it work and really start to understand what we're hoping that you do, then you have a far better chance of helping your departments to come up with good recommendations as well. And so we're trying to make this one as practical and simple as possible, because if you can start to master at this level, then you're going to be even better at starting to look at how you roll this out at large scale across your department and across other departments in the organization. So think about yourself, Casey in Plano. Look at your own individual positions time allocation. The idea is to open up your data, find your specific position, find you in your data set, and look at your time allocation. And there are only 2 simple exercises that you're going to want to try on your own, and ultimately that you're going to want other department heads and other users to try. The idea is, of all the programs you provide, can you find just one program that you wish you had more time to devote to? And it could also be a brand new program, something that you're not offering today or you're not devoting time to at this moment, but you're looking out towards next year and you realize you're going to have to figure out a way to get into this new program. You're going to have to carve out some time. So that's task number 1. Can you find one program that you wish you had more time to devote to, you sure would love to increase your influence? And second component of this task, can you identify one program that you would love to do less of, that you would love to delegate to somebody else to help you out with, or stop doing entirely? We have included some bonus material. For instance, if the bonus way to look at this is, if tomorrow you needed to somehow free up 20% of your time for a new initiative that landed on your plate, what would be your recommendation to do it, given how you currently allocate your time? The hope is that this is a very simple, practical exercise that anybody can answer. If a department or if you yourself can't answer this question, that would be a surprise. Really, one program can you at least find one that you would love to do less of, or delegate, or stop doing entirely? For many people, that's like a lot of the programs on their list. If you could find one program that you could just scratch out a little more time to do more of because it's a priority, and you just feel like you don't have enough time to get to it, we're only hoping to find 2 programs here. As you take a moment to find yourself in your data set and look at your programs, to think through how you would answer this question, and we hope that some of you actually will in Engage PBB, but at least be able to answer it for yourself. We'll show you an example. So here, I was in Benicia last week, and so I was working through some of these examples with their staff and some of the exercises. So here is economic development in the city of Benicia within the tools, and we click into personnel, and we find Mario, the economic development manager. Here are all of Mario's programs and all of his time allocation to the programs that he supports. So following the exact same exercise, of all the programs, his reallocate program, the one that he wishes he could spend less time on or delegate or stop doing overall, is board and commission support for one particular economic development board. And the overall thought is, maybe I can't get out of doing this program altogether, but can we meet a little less frequently? He's spending at least 5% of his time there. His belief is that it might actually be more. We did this presentation with Flagstaff, Arizona yesterday. And just this is where we had like uproarious laughter for all the board and commission support that actually takes place in an organization. But he's just been doing something really cool, which is tagging all of the boards and commissions for which staff members spend time supporting, doing analysis ahead of time, doing some agenda management, and then actually showing up and being at the meeting. And their point in doing that is that they're demonstrating this data to council to be able to say, hopefully, look, there are many different boards that we support, and there's a lot of staff time, a lot of resources that we're investing. Are all of these boards still relevant? Can we sunset one of the boards and retire it? Can we meet a little less frequently overall? In doing so, can we free up some of our resources so that we can refocus our time, our staff time on doing other things? His program to try to increase his investment, where he wishes he had more time to spend, is business retention and expansion. So he's economic development director, and with his time, he sure would love to have more opportunity to spend engaging with local businesses. Benicia is a suburb of the San Francisco, Oakland area. There are many other cities competing for local business, and keeping that economy strong is one of their major result areas. But I hope you see the simplicity and in this exercise, and yet what we're trying to get at is that any specific individual, you included, would hopefully be able to identify at least one, if not many, programs that you are currently devoting your time to. Your goal moving forward is to recommend how to do less of that program. And your goal moving forward is also to find some of those programs where you need to increase your investment overall. And if you can start to do it and you see how you would use your own data, then it becomes easier for you to have your own department consider how they might make these recommendations. And then it certainly makes it easier to look out across the organization and ask other departments, really? Don't you have at least one program where you would hope to spend less time invested in it, where your current investment just does not seem right? What I also love about this exercise is that it's so focused at the program level. Yes, Mario can see that he spends roughly 5% of his time supporting boards and commissions, but it's not necessary for him to even have a total program cost or to even understand the relationship of that program with results. He knows just looking at program inventory data alone, for him to be spending as much time as he is on board and commission support is just the wrong direction. The right direction is, can I shrink that possibly? And he knows the right direction for business retention and expansion is, I gotta be spending more time there. That's really profound as you start to think about how to use this data. They've gone further. Mario dug into this particular program, boards and commissions, found that he's at 5%. Another one of their staff members is over at 7%. And this was a vacant position now, who has been spending almost 10%. So it wasn't just him. He's looking out across the department and seeing all of the staff who are supporting just this one board and realizing we've got to be doing less. There's a great opportunity to try to advocate for freeing up and reallocating resources. This is a different view outside of the tools, but this is my time allocation. We went through this exercise at ResourceX, going through all of the areas where we spend our time. And I'm drawing your attention to two areas. One is, this was early last year, where I was spending upwards of 20% of my time on helping clients implement PBB, basic project kickoffs, showing up on site to do program inventory, coaching and support, a program scoring or costing webinar for any of our organizations as they're moving along. And I was spending, at best, 7% of my time helping clients take action on the data, just like this workshop. And what we have been intentional about as a company is we have been constantly working on ways for our own staff to take on more and more of the implementation of PBB allowing myself and Eric Keck, especially with the leadership course that he's running, and this type of resource exploration opportunity for me to expand my time helping organizations practice these exercises, apply their data, and make progress. I have an upcoming workshop in the city of Salem, Oregon, that'll be on site for this exact style, running through exercises one-on-one with departments to look at their program data. This is extremely exciting to me, but this is how we start to communicate. How do I use this data to communicate to my own staff, or how does Mario use his time allocation to communicate to his staff, look, I need to shrink my investment in this particular program, and if I can do it, I'm going to free up hours that I can now start to use for other programs that we really need to get into. Very simple exercise. That is the transition from level 1 to level 2. And I will go ahead and pause for 2 or 3 more minutes. If any of you have the opportunity to go ahead and look at your own time allocation and consider where you would free up, just looking for one program that you'd love to shrink, one program that you'd love to be able to do more of. When I did this in Flagstaff, Cliff Bryson was the first to notice that I had listed 0% of time for Taco Tuesdays, and that is going to need some bolstering. Completely agree with Cliff. So I'll pause for just a second. All right. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at your own time allocation. If you haven't yet, no problem. Take the exercise and try it later. And again, the hope is if you can begin to master this, try it out with a couple of others in your department. Try it with your super user team. Lead by example. If you can demonstrate where you want to shrink investment in one program and you find out how easy it is, then the hope is we can start to encourage departments to look for the same. And the same is true on the other end of the spectrum. What programs do we really need to be spending more time on that we just can't get to today? And that would be a motivating factor to free up time from another program overall. Hopefully it's easy. We're all in search of finding more time to be able to do things, I believe. So let's continue on in level 2. Another level 2 exercise has been awesome. This has been inspired by the city of Littleton, actually, and it's totally blueprint related. If you imagine the last exercise was about you personally, your time allocation, the programs that you personally spend time on. Now let's broaden this out to your department. What Littleton did is they said, we love the idea of the blueprint. We love the idea that what we're doing with the blueprint is tagging programs with some sense of our future recommendation. I'm going to tag boards and commissions in Benicia and say, it might not happen overnight, it might not happen tomorrow, but the overall direction is we've got to be doing less of that program. We've got to have a service level reduction in order to free up resources and reallocate them to something new. In Benicia, they talked about that cannabis program. I'll get to it here in just a second. They had the full cost, but they wanted to know, what are we doing for cost recovery? So as you peruse the blueprint, you see we have the 3 strategies for freeing up resources. We have the 3 strategies for generating new revenue. You have the left-hand side of the blueprint, which is programs that need to grow. And of course, there's status quo. Well, what Littleton did is they said, okay, every department, what do you have? 20 programs, 30 or more in some cases. Of all of the programs you offer, we're going to take a practice round and give me just one where the future is we're going to need to grow it. Well, that seems easy. That's like the normal recommendation. Every program is up for increased service levels, but there's things seriously. Just give me one where your recommendation is we're going to have to grow this. Maybe it's a homelessness program that you just launched, or cannabis in Benicia. And as you look out towards the future, it's likely not going down. It's likely going to be increasing. Great. Can you find one other program where its future is explore new revenue? Can you name one program where, as you analyze the costs and the cost recovery or the revenues coming in, you see an opportunity where the city can charge a little bit more to achieve closer to 100% cost recovery? Do you have just one program on your list that can do that? Or do you have a program where maybe it's an insourcing opportunity for revenue? Or maybe like Benicia Parks and Rec, it's a program where we can generate some state grant dollars. Just find one where you think there's a revenue option to look out for. And finally, find me one program where the future is we're going to have to lower our investment. I've harped on boards and commissions too long. Think about, well, I'll get you an example, even in Littleton, that might surprise you. There's a high priority program, in their case, payroll processing, and their intuition was the future direction is we can find more efficient ways to do it, and thereby freeing up resources. We think our investment is going to either be status quo or hopefully go down in order for us to free up human resources to do something else. We heard that in some cases, the departments picked 2 programs at least. That's like the bare minimum. And then the city manager picked a third, which was something that he wanted to see identified. So that was really cool. You can think about this. I know KCK, the Unified Gov, you have a meeting coming up in October. I think it's the 16th. I was just hearing from Kathleen. And this is a perfect exercise to roll out, hey, departments, can you just pick 2 programs, maybe a third, where you can identify what the future opportunity is according to the blueprint. Our belief, what we're trying to get across in this exercise, is that every single program you provide, every program in your inventory can be tagged with a future direction that you're aiming for. You might be wrong. You might predict or hope that you're going to grow a program that really needs additional service levels, and then you find out 2 years later that you found a partner who can actually do it, who's doing a great job, and you can decrease your investment. Or vice versa. You might have a program that in a perfect world you would love to shrink and do as little as possible of it, and then a new mandate appears and your plans are changed. You've got to grow it to appease the new mandate. That's okay. The point is we should have an intention about the future of each and every program in the inventory, and what better place to start than tagging programs, which you can do in the tools with a program comment. If you have a question about that, where to apply those program comments, great question for your support analyst. But the idea is every program should be able to be tagged with, I think my direction is we have a partner and I'm going to work on how to do this in a more regional way to free up resources. Or I think the direction is we've got to be able to do this more efficiently. Roswell, Georgia had irrigation in the parks, and they found a way through meters, through sensors, that is, to measure the groundwater saturation. So that's a program where their use of water has gone down. It's become more efficient. Great. Tag programs where you think you can apply technology. Maybe it's meter reading and you currently do it in a manual way, and you're saying to yourself, man, 5 years out in the future, if we're still doing this in a manual approach, that just seems like it's the wrong direction. The future has to be program efficiency for meter reading in order to free up resources and fund something else with the savings that we can achieve. The blueprint is our framework for telling the story of trade-off decisions. For every new program or program that we want to grow, the hope is we're constantly opening up all the options for where we could decrease spending in certain programs and bring in more money. And that's the ultimate balance. So just a couple of examples. Here, looking at the specific opportunity area of fees and charges. Remember that in your data, you come up with the cost of every program. And for those of you who have either scored on cost recovery or even allocated program revenue, you can look at all of the programs across the organization where there's a difference between those. That's exactly what South Jordan did. They were looking at all of the programs that the revenues coming in were less than the total cost of providing it. And here is a very simple example. Their first go around in the tools, they had no program revenue for dog licensing for a program that was costing nearly $20,000. Over time, the program cost has increased, and now they're starting to attribute program-specific revenue to make headway in that cost recovery. So that's tagging dog licensing with a cost recovery opportunity. Maybe they'll never be 100%, that's okay, but the future for this program is if I was running dog licensing or I'm in the department who provides it with an animal control or an animal shelter, I'm hoping over time I can inch this up. Maybe someday we'll get to a break-even point, but that's my goal. I'm going to tag it with the program comment. Its future has to be a revenue-generating opportunity overall. South Jordan did the same thing in terms of programs that they need to shrink. And some of these, the programs went down in cost, even though the level of service did not change. For others, it truly was where they found a partnership opportunity or they shrunk their investment. I'll give you a couple examples. Here is the Miss South Jordan pageant program. So it's a special event. South Jordan runs a Miss South Jordan pageant. In 2016, the cost is something around $20,000. The tag on the program, its future is, hey, this is a program that is maybe not as relevant as it used to be, and we're going to start to wind our investment away from it. That's the future, and maybe it's not something that the city provides forever. This is the mark of progress for this program. They're heading in the right direction and freeing up resources to fund something else. Here's another one of their programs, again, where divesting resources, decreasing investment is the program tag. That's the direction. This might surprise you. This is business recruitment and retention. This is actually a program that scored really highly. It's quartile 1 or quartile 2, has tremendous influence on economic vitality. And as you can see here, the cost is $370,000 in 2016, $223,000 down to $76,000 and $56,000. Here's a very high priority program that they're rapidly divesting themselves from investment into that program overall. And what's the reason? In their case, South Jordan used to be the only provider, the only folks who were looking after the happiness of local businesses and the attraction of businesses. You fast forward to today, and their metro area, Salt Lake City, has taken a huge stance in trying to generate far more attention for that region. They have the Olympics. And so very intelligently, South Jordan is tagging this program with partnership. We can wind down our investment because it's not needed. It's not needed for us solely as the city provider to look after business recruitment. It's happening already. Let's wind down our investment and reallocate those resources elsewhere. The story of South Jordan overall is that through the years that they had been applying PBB, they've had a pretty flat budget. And yet at the same time, so it's 1% increase, they've seen an increase of 18%, $10.2 million, towards new programs that they need to get into or current programs that need enhancement. And the only possible way that you can do that, creating $10 million of investment out of nothing when the taxes weren't there, is they have found 3% of their budget to intelligently decrease the level of service that they're providing. That's the Miss South Jordan example. They found another 3% through program efficiencies. They've depended on partners, just like business recruitment and attraction, to free up 5%. And for every dog licensing program where they've generated new revenues, they have more and more of those generating new 6% of resources. That's an 11% reallocation of resources and 7% from new revenue. That's what this looks like when you start to really get that flywheel going, tagging many programs, not just 3 with their future. This is what we're shooting for. But start small, start like Littleton. Here is back to Benicia and that cannabis story. I showed you the cost earlier was $132,000. The next question from council was, what about the revenue being generated? And here they are at $9,200, barely anything coming into cannabis. And so what's the recommendation? What's the future of this program? It's cost recovery. So this is what, in your tools, you're able to go through and tag cost recovery for a program, and that's how they're going to report on it. Is every year they're hoping that they're going to be able to recover more costs. Again, they might get shot down by council. Maybe council says, we're not comfortable charging this much. But in this case, it's actually looking like a win. They're changing their business model to license at a higher fee and hopefully generating a lot more revenue. Here's one more. Oh, there's another board and commission. Community sustainability. The recommendation here is service level decrease. That tag is just like Miss South Jordan pageant for this program. So the future is, man, here's what we're investing today for our people. And as we move towards the next few years, we want this direction to go down. Last slide on this exercise, I'll just show you Littleton for their Pick 3 Programs initiative. They actually created little information sheets to inform council about their recommendation pertaining to the blueprint. So here's median and streetscape maintenance. That was tagged with service level increase. They want increased investment to provide a higher level of service for this program. And here's payroll processing, where they found a program efficiency, service level staying the same, but doing without the filling of a vacancy that took place. That's their recommendation. When we apply the blueprint, we see median and streetscape maintenance is a left-hand side of the blueprint, increasing service levels, and the 21 grand on payroll processing program efficiency comes from the right-hand side of the blueprint, and that is that trade-off for telling those stories. So a lot of examples here. Again, I do it because it's a very simple exercise in the Littleton way of just getting started, getting some practice, having every department pick 3 programs and apply the blueprint to tag their programs with a future recommendation. My hope is you can look at your own department's program list, find one where increasing spending is the direction, find one where you're hoping to find a partner or find a program efficiency or lower service levels, find one more program where increasing revenue is the opportunity overall. I will stop again, allow you just a couple of minutes to peruse your own program inventory, able to do it in the tools right now, or just using a pen or your mind, identify 3 programs yourself and see if this is an easy task. Again, totally focused on the level 2 objectives. And I'll take a break and take a look at Engage PBB and see what other questions are coming up. I'll also open it up if we have any brave souls who wish to unmute themselves or raise their hand in the Zoom chat box to share if they have one example of a program to reallocate resources away from, one example of a program to generate new revenue, or one that's in need of increased investment. Go ahead and if you've got the courage, unmute yourself or raise your hand so we can unmute you and see if we have anybody who wishes to share. That'd be great. All right, let's move on. So end goal, if you can start with pick 3 programs, awesome. The future focus is tag every program. And while some of your programs might end up at a status quo level, that's totally okay. Here's Duluth, Minnesota. When they first went through this and started to really use program comments and the tools, you can sort on the blueprint tags. Look, the vast majority of their programs were in status quo mode, absent a future recommendation. No problem. Look at all of the service level increase programs, cost recovery. Oh, you can customize the future recommendation outside of the blueprint. Blueprint's nice because it reports that way. Cost recovery, service level decrease, partnership opportunities. Here's library and a subset of specific programs recommended for service level decrease, specific programs for increase. So applying that same mentality of pick 3 programs. And Eric just posted in the Zoom chat box a link to exactly how Littleton went about it. But the hope is, as you move forward, you have a sense, you have that business intelligence on what is the direction that departments recommend for every program. Think how awesome of a conversation that would be, especially if you agree or disagree. Department has a recommendation to increase a program. That might be news to you. Your hope might be, no way, we need to be getting out of that business and looking for a partner. Great intelligence to have to drive that conversation about where you both think any particular program should head. We're over halfway, time-wise, time allocation, practicing what we preach, and also in the workshop itself. But we're moving into level 3 on the 4 levels of mastery. And whereas level 2 is all about how can we get good at freeing up resources and generating new resources, the right-hand side of the blueprint, the main question is, towards what are we hoping to free up resources in order to fund? What do we need new money to do? And this is a great exercise for your elected officials. It's a great exercise for your department as well, as you're trying to think up new programs or new things that you want to launch. We draw your attention back to your result maps and how each of your results were defined, because that's really supposed to be the way that we're recommending whether or not we launch a new program or grow something. And the idea here, as we think about level 3, remember level 3 is, okay, what are those big, hairy, audacious goals that we need to be tackling that are going to inspire us to launch new programs? In Kalamazoo, it was end generational poverty. In Scott County, Minnesota, it's ending homelessness or whatever. It doesn't have to be that noble. In Littleton, it's also, get back up to speed on street maintenance. Fantastic. Transportation, mobility, infrastructure, those key result areas. The question here is, as you consider your results and the way that you define them, and you're really thinking about how you're going to drive towards the future and improve what you're doing, it might not always be the case that it's going to take a city run program to go after your future goals. It might be the case, it might be something that your city or your county might need to launch, or your school district, Washoe, but it might be nothing to do with a program that you're providing. It might be a policy that you're rolling out. And maybe it takes resources to fund the execution of that policy or its monitoring or enforcement. And it might also be a partnership. So we tried to focus on the 3 Ps. Is it a program that you're likely going to launch to tackle that massive goal? Is it a policy that needs to be created? It's going to really help you to do something, or a partnership? And I'll show you some examples here as you consider it with your own results and your own result definitions. Here is Kalamazoo and one of their results for shared prosperity. That is one of their major result areas in all of the various definitions. And as you dig into it, one of the definitions is around promoting strong families. And they went even further to document what they think it's going to take, what's their thesis, to promote strong families in the context of the result of shared prosperity. And the game to play is, as we're thinking about what it's going to take to achieve this or to enact this or bring it to life, are we talking about a city-run program? Is it a policy that we're going to want to create? Or is it somebody else that we're going to need to partner with, but we want it to happen, but we need to now take responsibility for instigating or catalyzing that partnership? And you can take each one of these strategies in their thesis. For example, ensure families have localized access to critical benefits and resources, i.e. childcare, transportation and mobility options, etc. So the question here is if you're in Kalamazoo's shoes, is this a program that the city is going to launch? So to ensure families have localized access to childcare, the question is, are we going to launch a childcare center from the city of Kalamazoo? Maybe the answer is yes. We have some communities who currently offer childcare programs. Sometimes they serve internally, your own staff in the city. Other times they are full-fledged childcare operations for your citizens. Oftentimes those programs were started when there weren't other childcare opportunities in the community. So it was a priority, but now there are other options. But that's a great question to ask. Is this a program that the city is going to need to start if they don't have any childcare options? Or is it a policy to roll forward to incentivize something, to incentivize the development or the launch of more childcare centers? In Denver, Colorado, they're pretty saturated with the childcare opportunities that are there. So what can the city do to incentivize more providers? Or is it a partnership overall to help maybe a regional transportation district or a provider, if you have something like that, when we start to get into transportation and mobility options? So that's the great question. We're focused on the left-hand side of the blueprint. What is it that we're going to do that gets us to move the needle on this particular result? And we can go on down the line, incentivize the development of affordable, safe housing stock. Even the way they worded it, this is likely not a program of the city to build houses, to build affordable, safe housing stock, but to provide an incentive program that helps encourage the developers to go after more affordable, safe housing. Great. So we're starting to know the difference between a program you're going to launch, a policy you're going to roll out, or a partnership. Provides support to increase home ownership. Most likely a partnership overall. Doubtful that it's a city program to provide citizens with actual money to increase home ownership, but maybe they do offer a program around how to improve your credit or how to know what your options are to work better with your local banks and find out what the mortgage programs are. And maybe it is a partnership specifically with the bank as they think through how they're going to achieve this goal. You can do it for any of your result areas. I won't go through. Here's increased access to good jobs. And they've gone through again and tried to outline what it's going to take to achieve this result definition. And now we can really focus that discussion on, is it a city-run program? Is it a policy, a partnership, and so on and so forth. And the final P, of course, is price tag. For anything that they come up with, what is it going to cost, so that we can again focus on that left-hand side of the blueprint and say, what do we need money to do, and that will help us understand what we need to free up from the right-hand side of the blueprint overall. We were, Eric Keck and I were in the city and county of Denver just a few days ago, and the city is now talking about things that they're interested in related to climate change. And from the staff perspective, they're wondering, well, what is it that we're going to do? Are we going to launch programs? Are we going to work with local businesses or the community? Are we going to enact certain policies? And ultimately, what is the price tag for all of the things that we wish to launch, for which we now need to fund with resources to reallocate or revenues to generate overall? Fantastic exercise internally for your department, even better to focus the discussion with council, totally focused on results, definitions, and what they have on their mind that are going to be new programs to launch as they get into it. We'll go ahead and leave that one as we move to the next exercise, but pause for just a second to think through, if you have a strategic planning retreat coming up and the focus is on what new things do we need to be launching, or what are the goals, or what's your vision for 2040, this is a great way to try to translate the kind of things that your elected officials are talking about into specific programs, policies, or partnerships, and what they're going to cost as you're thinking about funding them. And the next exercise is totally related. Once you go through that work, for any of those programs that you find, the things that you're actually going to get into, I want you to practice identify 3 programs that you think are on your horizon that you're going to have to get into the business of doing. Maybe you're thinking of launching something to do with opioids or fentanyl, or maybe you have a program that has to do with increased access to transportation. Maybe you have a new program that is about climate change, like the city and county of Denver. The hope, the skill set, the muscle that we're trying to help you build here is to think through, do you have 3 programs that you know you're going to be getting into the business of doing, and that if you don't, there's likely nobody else who's waiting to fill your shoes to launch something out there. Otherwise, it would be a partnership opportunity and not a program that you're about to launch. And the reason this is really important, at least in our experience, so often we see on the capital project side that it's very common, not always, but very common for cities and counties, school districts to have a 5 or 10-year outlook on all of the infrastructure projects that are coming up. You know the asset management that needs to take place. You know the roads that need improvement. You know the transportation projects that need to be built. You know the facilities that you're gearing up for in your planning to roll out. Maybe in fleet or IT, you have a technology replacement plan to roll out, and you have fleet and vehicles to replace. But seldom, my point is, seldom do we see the equivalent on the programmatic side. Almost nowhere, if you have something like this, we'd love to see it. Almost nowhere do we see a community who says simultaneously, besides capital projects, over the next 5 to 10 years, we're also planning to launch these 5 programs. They're very important for us to be able to launch, and we're going to need resources some way, somehow, to be pulled out of certain programs and repurposed, or new resources coming into the equation in order to fund these 3 new things that are absolutely critical for the future of our community. That has impacted us. We have it on the capital side. It's much easier to put your finger on a project and commit to it. But why don't we have it on the programmatic side? Why don't we have a list of things that we need to be getting into the business of doing, and therefore driving our need to repurpose resources? Probably a terrible title. Christmas time is here. What are those new 3 programs that we need to start? Sometimes they can feel like Pandora's box, but seriously, we have to start on that left-hand side of the blueprint to make it compelling to drive those repurposing discussions. Let me help you think about it another way. One of the reasons we think that it's so easy for an organization to stay in status quo mode, where all of your programs are kind of on autopilot, they just persist or grow, we don't really talk about doing less of a program or sunsetting a certain program, is because we're absent that compelling reason to shift those resources to do something else. Our own Eric Keck has a story from the city of Inglewood, and one of the programs that was fairly low priority was a step aerobics program in the recreation center. The program came to Eric's attention. He followed the blueprint and he said, well, it appears that it's not recovering its cost. Here we have a quartile 4 program. Reasonable question to ask is, can we do anything on the cost recovery front? And staff said, well, here's truly the story. We only have 2 users for the step aerobics program. The total cost computed was somewhere around $50,000 or $60,000 for the staff time running the program or teaching the course and the facilities that they're renting. So Eric, so the staff person finished the story and said, if we divide that 50,000 by the 2 users, it's gonna be about 25 grand a piece. Not gonna fly, right? Eric, the light bulb on his head was, wait a second, I get you on cost recovery, but why are we offering a program that serves 2 people? That makes no sense at all. This is a prime, forget cost recovery, let's get out of this business and reallocate our resources to something else. He thought it was a no-brainer. However, when brought to council, the recommendation doesn't go forward. And one of our lessons from this whole experience, and this is not unique to Inglewood, but you put yourself in the shoes of your elected officials, and when all they see from you, and this might be really important for those of you, Juan and Rio Rancho, Jeff and Washoe, as you're thinking about budget reductions, when the only thing that an elected official is presented with is a list of things to cut, it's terribly painful. There's only the negative side of that story, rather than, as you see here in this quote, tell me what you're going to do with the resources that is better than how we're using them today. What is the completion of the story? Where are we going to repurpose them? Again, that left-hand side of the blueprint. Because absent a better trade-off, and the trade-off might be, hey, we heard this from Flagstaff yesterday, we don't need to start a new program per se, we need to build our reserves. Or we don't need to start a new program, we don't have enough resources to fund everything that we're doing, so it truly is a cut. But in South Jordan, Utah's case, where they are fueling so much towards new needs, that is the rest of the story. We're talking about doing less of step aerobics in this case, because we're going to use those resources that we're going to free up to do something far better. Jim Collins has the stop doing list in Good to Great, and there's a key fundamental assumption behind a stop doing list. The assumption is we're gonna free up a lot of our time by getting out of dedicating our time to things that matter less, in order to reorient that time towards things that we need to start doing. And that might just be, we need more time to plan. We need more time to think. It's not stop doing so that we have nothing else to do, unless your trade-off is leisure time. But that is the total trade-off. Our point here is left-hand side of the blueprint, we have to get good at identifying what are the things we need to start doing, because that's going to give context to why it's important to repurpose resources and why we need to know all of our options for generating new revenue overall. That's the how component on the right-hand side of the blueprint. So again, pause. This one's worthwhile. We still have 30 minutes left and just a couple of last exercises here to go through. But this one's worthwhile taking 3 minutes or so. And hopefully you can identify 3 programs that your city, county, school district is thinking about getting into for which you're going to need resources to launch. The equivalent of the CIP is more bold than we're asking for at this point, but what are 3 programs you wish you could get into? again, I'll open it up if anybody wants to raise their hand. This one should be the easiest one, especially if you talk to departments. Less hard to talk about new things we want to start, if only we had the money to do it. But always intriguing because sometimes it is hard. We're not used to talking about new things we want to get into because maybe the economy has been so stale for so long in our community. We don't have enough resources to go after new things. But anybody have a care to share? Go ahead and post in the Zoom group chat of one program that they would love to launch. If you hear that tick-tocking, it's the wings of a solar-powered cardinal. It sounds like a clock going tick-tock, tick-tock in the background, but that was the sound of, maybe it's hard to come up with 3 programs on your end, but great exercise to go through. And last of the level 3 exercises, we've really tried to emphasize with so many of these exercises so far that it is about everyday business intelligence and management insight to make programmatic recommendations. And it's not necessarily the sole function of program level intelligence to influence the budget. However, all of these recommendations obviously have a budget recommendation that you can make with what you're learning. And so we did want to have at least one exercise to talk about, okay, so now we've worked on the results and definitions. We have programs, policies, partnerships, and price tags. We identified 3 programs that are needed on the left-hand side of the blueprint to fund for the future. Now take any of those programs that you've just identified, and they've already been through some filtering, but how would you use this data in a new budget request? How do you actually inform the budget process for any of these new needs that are obviously competing or being differentiated among other requests, and certainly among all the rest of the things that you're already doing? So the spirit of this exercise is new budget requests. So again, with the blueprint, we have new budget requests are on the left-hand side, and the way we're going to fund them is either through new revenue generation or through a repurposing of current resources. And just a framework, a series of questions to ask as you consider new budget requests. So you have a new program on the table, or more often how it works, a department is requesting an additional FTE or an additional 10 FTE or an increase in a particular line item. If we've learned anything, the very first, the most important question to ask is what program or number of programs does this line item request or FTE request tie to? Hopefully we've recentered the entire conversation around the programmatic level, and that's going to be the question of the day. So is it a new service that we're launching, a new program overall? That would be great. We can move forward with the request. If the answer is no, is it an existing service that we're already providing that's already gone through PBB and been scored? If the answer is no, no problem. Please go back, department, and reframe your request or tell me something about where is this FTE going to spend their time? They might not know it exactly, like it's 35% in one program and 65% in another program, but they might know my intention is to use this new staff member to support cannabis licensing and enforcement. Great. What are the programs that this resource is going to be used to do? If it's a new service, the question is, how do you think this program would score? Tell me something about its relationship to results. Tell me something about the degree of mandate. Is this a requirement that we're trying to fulfill? Tell me something about its cost recovery, population served. All of those scoring criteria, another way to look at it, they're just questions you should ask about why we're providing this new service overall. And if it's an existing service, great, how did the program score? Do we have some sort of baseline intelligence that we can bring to this conversation about the new budget request? So that very first part, first things first, they're asking for a new resource. What program or programs is the resource going to support? Is it a new program? How did it score? How would it score? Or if it's a current program, how is it already scoring overall? And so now we're going to bring additional insight to refine the business case and think through, is this something worth approving or not? And the quartiles simply give us information on the program's relationship to your reasons why you provide it, the program's influence on results and basic program attributes. And one thing that's really important, sometimes your departments are feeling like, man, if a program is quartile 3 or quartile 4, I'll never get new funding for it. Well, not so fast. And that's what the purpose of this budget request flow diagram is all about. They might still have a chance of getting this resource approved, but let's ask some really important follow-up questions, such as, is the program that you're recommending funded by program revenue? So I'm asking for 2 new FTE. It's a quartile 4 program. I don't really want to grow it unless it's going to pay for itself. So is it coming with fees to offset that cost? Is it coming with a grant so that it's cost neutral? If the answer is yes, that could be interesting. But if the answer is no, okay, no problem. What's another question that might still make this compelling? Will the additional funding at all change the way that we provide this program? Is that what you're talking about? I need to add 2 FTE. We're going to change the way the program is designed. And now it's going to have a way higher influence on results. And that's why I'm asking for the FTE. That's a good reason. But if the answer is still no, all right, throw me a bone here. Can we find a partner to provide it? We're wanting to launch a new program. It has little relationship to results. It's not recovering its costs. You're not going to change the way it's funded. So you're asking me to grow a quartile 3 or quartile 4 program, and you're asking me to start one. Can we find somebody else who can help us do it? Is there a partner who we can encourage or incentivize? If the answer is still no, man, this is not very compelling for a proposal. So tell me, is it required? Is there a mandate forcing us to provide it? If the answer is no, then that is a really low on the list of compelling arguments to approve that funding. If the answer is yes, that is actually compelling, even for a low priority program, if it's going to pay for itself or change the way it's provided so it becomes a quartile 2 program overall. Same line of questions for quartile 1 and quartile 2. It's not automatic that because it's a Q1 or Q2 program that it just gets all the funding it needs forever. Will it actually improve our ability to achieve results to a higher degree? We might apply program metrics in this case. Tell me, with the new 2 FTE, how is this program going to get better at achieving results? If they have a compelling case, a story to tell using their PBB data, that's a great proposal. If the answer is, well, no, we're not going to get better at improving our results, then we can ask those same questions. Well, then to help me understand more, is it coming with program revenue, and so on and so forth. We really see this as a great way from all the level 3 dialogue we've had to frame requests for new resources. And hopefully at this point, we've really scrutinized, are we sure it's even a program we need to launch? Is it possible it's just a policy or a partnership overall? Hopefully this kind of ties it all together. So how do we start those new budget requests? We're starting on that left-hand side of the blueprint, starting with what are those 3 programs we need to start from that last exercise? And then finally, we get into the how. How are we going to fund it? Do we have any recommendations on that right-hand side of the blueprint for the new FTE that you're requesting? Can we actually reallocate current resources from any of our current strategies to fund that new position? And that will take advantage of some of the earlier exercises that we went through in level 2. We have 19 minutes left, and the last 2 exercises are going to go pretty quickly here. And then we'll actually have a little bit of time for some anybody who wants to ask some clarifying questions or get some further advice. I'm going to try to push for a wrap up here in the next 10 minutes or so, or less, 5 to 10 minutes. We now move into level 4. So changing your mindset from level 3, we're just talking about all the great things we can do to push for the achievement of results to a higher degree. Level 4 is, how do we become opportunistic in terms of looking for ways, looking for opportunities to get programs off of our plate, leveraging our partners in the community to free up as much of our resources as we possibly can in order to start level 3, left-hand side of the blueprint, new programs. So being opportunistic, and the other side of it is being entrepreneurial. What are all of the options that maybe we don't think about regularly where we could generate new revenue? That might be through fees and charges, like the dog licensing in South Jordan. It might be through grants, like Benicia's state funding for Parks and Rec opportunities. And it might be through insourcing opportunities where you're really well positioned to insource a program, benefit your neighbors or benefit other partners, and sell services and make money. I'll show you an example that will probably be really familiar to you, but it's very simple. City of Inglewood, back to Eric Keck for just a moment, was positioned among 2 smaller communities, Sheridan and Cherry Hills Village, in their school district, Inglewood Schools. The City of Inglewood itself had a great fleet, a great garage for all of their fleet services, and actually some capacity. They had invested in it, and here they are sitting on this great business, this great asset. You talk to Sheridan or Cherry Hills Village or the Inglewood School District, and from their perspective, they're barely keeping up with their fleet replacement needs, the adequacy of their garage to handle their fleet operations and even staffing. So as those entities, Sheridan and Cherry Hills Village, were adding up all of the costs to them to bring their fleet operations to where it needed to be, compared to the deal that Inglewood could provide them as a regional provider of services, both of those entities and the schools as the third said, it's far cheaper for us and we'll get better service if we pay Inglewood. That's a win-win. That's what it means to be entrepreneurial. If you're Inglewood, they're generating new revenue. They didn't have to just add services and eat those costs. They generate new revenue for providing those services. It's a total win-win for the community. So this exercise, Shark Tank for Government, is look across all of your programs. Again, no different than tagging programs of blueprint opportunity areas. Open up your program inventory for your specific department and try out this exercise. Imagine the scenario. Taxes are frozen in place for the foreseeable future. Your only opportunity to generate any new revenue, whether it's for additional services that you're going to provide or for pay raises and increases, yours included, to make this interesting, is going to come from your department's ability to sell its services. Maybe you can sell it to other departments and they'll pay you internal service fund style. Maybe you're going to sell services to other public sector entities where you feel like you're really well positioned to provide something. Maybe it's to nonprofits, maybe it's to the private sector. Can you name one program? Here the challenge is, can you name 3 from your department that can make for an entrepreneurial revenue generating venture? Maybe you don't know if it's going to succeed, but 3 opportunity areas that could generate new revenue, thinking more like an entrepreneurial mindset. That is the exercise for how you might generate new resources overall. As you're thinking about this, I would love one example in the Zoom group chat where you think about your own fleet. That was the example that we used. You think about in Inglewood, another thing Eric Keck realized, he's very entrepreneurial, is that there weren't many places for small businesses locally. There wasn't like a Kinko's or a local FedEx for document production. And so one of the opportunities he wanted to consider was, could his own print operation advertise itself as a provider of services to fill a gap that no other business was doing in town and actually make some money if some local businesses needed to get a document printed or sent or a form notarized, providing that kind of service overall. Very entrepreneurial minded. Can you come up with just 1 or 3 from your own department's list that could be a revenue generating program overall? And the opposite side of the coin is thinking about, okay, let's not think about programs that we want to be the regional provider like Inglewood Fleet, but now think about where you're Sheridan or Cherry Hills Village from that fleet example that we just shared. Do you have any programs that you would love to get off of your plate, that there's somebody else that could help you provide it? You could free up your own resources and reallocate them for better use rather than struggling to provide something when there's another partner nearby who can absorb it. So in this case, again, you're putting yourself in the perspective of Sheridan or Cherry Hills Village. Inglewood did this. They said, hey, we're great to think about insourcing for fleet, but they turned right around and they outsourced their fire operation, where they formed a regional approach by sourcing it to the city of Denver Fire Department. Inglewood added up all the costs that it needed. That's what all these crazy slides are, for new staffing, new facilities, new equipment, new fleet, getting the pay of all of their staff up to where they wanted it to be, and figured out it's far better for them, better service, lower cost, no forced layoffs, only voluntary, by paying another provider for that particular program overall. So that is the spirit of reverse Shark Tank. Is imagine the exact same scenario. Taxes are frozen. Your only opportunity to get a pay raise ever again will not come from revenue, but from your ability to free up resources by tapping another partner and liberating resources to provide the current services that you want to continue to provide. And it could be other public sector entities, other nonprofits, or even the private sector. And bonus was name one additional program from another department overall. As I summarize level 4 and this entrepreneurial mindset or opportunistic mindset, we were talking to an elected official recently who said part of the spirit of all of this work is to at least know what your options are, know what all of your options are. You might not actually go through that entire list like South Jordan of cost recovery opportunities and make a recommendation that every single program needs to be 100% fee cost neutral, that the fees need to pay for 100% cost recovery. That's probably unrealistic. However, we must know what our options are overall. All of the levers that we could pull to generate new revenue. What are all the programs where the fees could get closer to the cost of providing the service? Cannabis, dog licensing. What are all of the programs where, like Inglewood Fleet, we are really well situated to possibly provide this to other entities, private sector, nonprofit, other public sector entities. We must know what all of our revenue generating options are to possibly deploy. We should know what all of our opportunities are for resource reallocation. Where could we free up current resources if we needed it? That's winding it all the way back to Mario looking at his own program inventory and finding, if I needed to free up 20% of my time tomorrow, which programs would I actually try to get out of? The entrepreneurial government should know, where could we become more efficient, where that's the future? What programs could we simply do less of and it's rational, like the Miss South Jordan pageant? What programs can we tap our partners to get off of our plate in order for us to free up resources, just like Washington County and South Jordan and Shawnee, those organizations who have freed up over 10% of their budget. And finally, and most importantly, where do you need to be investing in the future? That's the overall driving question, is what demands do you have for new programs that you're going to need to launch, or new capital projects? That is the hope to be driving all of this. So that actually wraps up the training in the presentation. I would like to pause here. First of all, thank you. It's almost 2 hours of training. The hope is, depending on where you feel like you are, level 1, level 2, 3, or 4 in your goals for PBB mastery, the hope is that maybe not all of these exercises are appropriate for you to try out in your organization tomorrow, but maybe a couple of them are. Maybe you really focus on the Littleton Pick 3 programs with your departments to just start to get some of this discipline and training. to roll out. Or maybe you're more like Benicia, and your first step is, hey, we're going to try this out for our next upcoming board meeting or council meeting, and we're going to try to use programmatic data to add value to that conversation. The hope is that this is good training and food for thought for you, for your own department, to start to take action on the data. And if you can start to get practice, try doing some of these things, you will start to gain that mastery. Eric Keck just noted in the Zoom chat box, remember to start small. Small wins is what we're looking for. That's why Littleton said pick 3 programs. They want to generate 3 wins, and then that starts to build the habit and the practice, and that's what changes a culture. The belief that all the way back to Santina's opening slide, that you have this data and everything is just going to change overnight, is unrealistic. We have to start with those small wins, build that momentum, build confidence in using data and being data-driven in decision-making approach. Start small, and that's how you begin to change your culture overall. We still have 7 minutes left. I thank everybody. I would open it up to any questions in the Zoom group chat. Casey just noted from Plano, City of Plano currently receives 50% reimbursement for police officers in Plano schools for the school resource officer program. It would be nice to get at least 75% reimbursement. That sounds great. Washoe County Schools, you might be thinking of that partnership from your perspective as well. But you can see it from both sides. Any questions that people want to contribute, either in the chat box, which would be great, or use your hand and unmute yourself. And I would open it up. Oh, how do we get copies of this presentation? Thanks, Seth. We actually included that link in the Engage PBB website. That is off of our website. So you go to resourcex.net. That's what Liz was demonstrating in the beginning. You hover over PBB communities, and the channel is applying PBB data, and Eric Fabian has posted a link to the slides, and Liz will be posting this recording and this training as well. I did want to mention, those are great questions, keep them coming. In Salem, Oregon, I mentioned this earlier, we're going to do this live on site, working one-on-one with departments to go through some specific exercises that are really pertinent for each particular department overall. That is something we're definitely open to do. If you're thinking about having some really focused, taking action on the data exercises with your departments, let us know. That's something we're interested in helping to support. Any of our team, Eric Keck, have any final comments in parting?
No, thanks, Chris. I think just the small things I've been trying to post in the chat box, and that is, for some, this may seem very overwhelming, but just like Chris, I think, tried to state a few times during the webinar today, really what you're trying to do is build organizational muscle memory, and that memory is really such that you're encouraging your organization to experiment in ways in which you're working towards calculated risks for experiments that are going to lead to sustainable success for your future. And you do want to start small, and you do want to ensure that you're celebrating those small wins that you make, so that it encourages others to want to take that same effort. And from my experience of having implemented PBB twice, first time rife with error, second time a little bit better, talking about the behaviors you want to see, encouraging people to experiment, and encouraging ideas, and definitely engaging not just the usual suspects in your organization to help do this, like your department directors or the budget people. This isn't a budgeting tool, guys. It is a management decision-making tool, and really should be dealt with as such. Get people to get excited about taking a look at this data and thinking about what the possibilities are for using it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. please keep the conversation going if you have additional questions, if it's slide related. If you want to try any of these exercises with your staff and you want to have a little bit extra strategy session, please reach out to us. Please post your questions on Engage PBB because maybe somebody else has a question as well and we can keep that conversation going. But couldn't say more. We really appreciate you joining us for this workshop. We're going to try to roll out a repeat of this. If you have other staff who you hope want to attend, we might be doing this on a more of a frequent basis. So we'd appreciate your feedback, things you'd like to see more of. If you'd like to see this course provided in additional ways, we're welcome to it all. With that, I'll go ahead and say thanks a ton, and we'll go ahead and wrap up.